Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur, and today we are taking a look at Queens. Yes, Queens. Here we are. We are going to be looking at the Queen unit as it is currently present in open beta, and it represents one of the last of the cards that was spoiled for all of us on Facebook before open beta went live. So as we continue looking at these, just know we're going to start going into territory for units and kind of showcasing what they're currently looking like in open beta, starting right after this part of the series, basically. So, just fair warning on that. Obviously, last week we ended up taking a look at the Zealot just because, frankly, it's good for you to know, like, roughly what one can expect from Protoss because we haven't seen anything for Protoss yet. But today we're kind of jumping back in. We're trying to round out some of those last few cards that we ended up viewing before we end up jumping into some of the cool stuff that is going on behind the scenes currently in testing. But just know that, yeah, the intention behind this is to take a look at what kinds of stuff is there and what role it's going to fill in your army, right? And so, obviously the Queen, just so you know, yes, over there on the right-hand side is the StarCraft 1 Queen, which could fly. So the question of what kind of queen are we talking about is very important. We are looking at the StarCraft 2 Queen, which is currently the one that they have in the game, which is not to say that we could never see the StarCraft 1 Queen at some point appear. I don't think we're going to. That's my hunch. It might be really far down the line before we see that. But just suffice it to say, I think it's an important and integral question because this is going to be your primary means of support, right? And not quite in the same way as a medic, a little bit in the same way as a medic squad. But I think it is very helpful for us understanding what kind of support things might look like for the Zerg. And so, as we look at this, this was the card that was spoiled for us. This was one of the later cards that was spoiled for all of us in the Facebook group. And you'll notice a few things off of it. First of all, it's slow, right? I mean, she has a speed of 4, which, considering it's a single model, is really slow because typically units get an extra 3 inches of range for their movement when there's only one model in it. This is a very slow model. Now, that being said, there are upgrades that allow her to go faster as long as she's on creep and stuff like that, which is very thematic, right? It's keeping her on creep, moving up the stuff, doing things creep generation in, adjacent, which is excellent. But just suffice it to say, this is a very slow model. You'll also notice this is the first model that we've seen that has no evade option. Just there is no evade. It would fail an evade. She would fail an evade roll even if she got to make one, which is also important for understanding your options, which means that your primary defense is going to be that 4+ armor. And if somebody is bypassing armor in order to send things through, wounds straight through, there is no other option, right? It's just going to go through. And so while she does have 10 hit points, realize that she's not all powerful, right? There are a lot of ways that a unit could do damage to her and take her down relatively quickly as long as they focused enough on her. You also find that she is size 3. This means that if she was looking over, say, a size 2 wall, which would be blocking a roach or a zergling or hydralisk or something like that, if she were to be on the other side of that wall and a marine were to see her, she could see the marine and the marine could see her because she is in fact taller than those things are. And when standing on, I think it's a 80mm base, at least that's juxtaposing her to other stuff, because I haven't received any miniatures yet, but juxtaposing her to other stuff, it looks like an 80mm base. She's going to be huge. Okay? She's going to be very, very tall, probably easily 4 or 5 inches tall, which is incredible. She only takes up 1 supply, which is great. So, it's not going to hurt you all that much there. And when you look at those special abilities that were first originally spoiled, you'll notice that she is clearly in that support role, right? She's placing additional creep tumors while Zerg units are on creep. They get a bonus to their speed, which is nice. And depending on what kind of creep you take as your tactical card, they can give benefits, other alternative benefits as well. So, kind of awesome how that works out. You'll see she's got that transfusion ability. This is basically the healing ability that's present in the game for various different nations. In this case, just once per round. When a friendly biological unit or structure within 4 inches receives wounds, then you reduce the wound count. Okay, so we haven't reviewed medics yet, but just know this is basically how it works. This has undergone some changes from the original card that we've seen, but it's basically always the same way. It's always a reaction. It costs 1 of whatever your energy resource is. And just once per round, not per phase, but per round, you get a chance to block down the number of wounds by a certain amount. Okay? She also has Psionic Link, which means that while she is within range of a certain number of friendly models, in this case 8 friendly models, then she can reduce the cost in biomass for a specific skill by 1. Now, that is also once per round, but it means that, for example, you could plan around, okay, I'm going to be able to proc transfusion for free because once per round I get to perform that action. And as long as I'm near a large number of models, as long as you're surrounding her with Zerg, which thankfully Zerg have quite a few ways to do that, then you'll be able to reduce down her cost for a bunch of those abilities, which is great. And then with the creep spread, with the creep speed, she basically can move a little bit faster while she's on creep, which is fantastic. You kind of need that. This is really the only upgrade that she gets, the only one that you would need to pay extra points for in order to receive. And this has also undergone a little bit of a change, but just suffice it to say, hey, the fact that she's a little bit slow, this would allow her to catch up and maintain speed with the rest of your models, which is excellent. In the movement phase, she gets the Domineering Presence. This allows her basically to select a unit within 6 inches and just allow it to count for more based on whatever the objective and mission rules are. And she doesn't even have to be able to see them. They can be on the other side of a massive wall. But as long as they're within 6 inches of her, she can improve what they count as, which could help you maintain control of certain objectives, completely claim something that the opponent thought they had, all of which is really good. And then in the assault phase, we get our first attacks. She has talons, which are pretty short range at only 6 inches. Okay, but she can use those against ground targets. Reasonable chance to hit, reasonable ROA. Not great, but not too bad. She does get surge type, and they're each worth 2 damage each, which is not horrible. And then against air targets, she has a longer range at 12 inches. Again, same level of attacking, but she gets surges against light and armored units, so basically everything, with a D3 surge doing 2 damage each, which is really, really nice against air targets. She does technically have impact hits. They are, there are 4 impact hits on a 3+, which is, not bad, right? When you're running into things. Now, admittedly, in the combat phase following those impact hits, her damage is whatever. She's only getting 3 attacks on a 4+, no surges, and only doing 1 damage each. So, it's not great damage, but hey, at least you can do something before you get in there, right? As long as you're not going up against something with a really high armor save. And so as you can tell, her attacks are fine. They're better than a medic, right? They're better than, some of the other support options that exist and probably will exist. I anticipate this will be better than a High Templar that's not using its, Psionic Storm and things like that. So it is probably better than some units will have. It is not great by comparison to actual attack units, but it is fine. Where she really shines is those supporting abilities to be able to block wounds in order to maintain survival. The fact that she has psionic links, that way she can continue to do useful things throughout the round. The ability to spread creep out, so that way it's not just your initial creep spread and you're done. All of this stuff is really useful, and on its own, probably a good reason for taking her. And as we've gone into testing, we've actually seen very few changes actually happen to her, which is a good sign. It means that the Archon Studios team kind of had a pretty good sense and feel about what she needed to be and where she needed to be. And we really haven't seen a lot of changes. The only major change we've actually seen is the fact that now transfusion only reduces the total damage before allocation by 2. It's the only difference, right? It's a very tiny one. And then they brought down the requirement to 7 friendly models instead of 8 for her psionic link. But other than that, literally everything else is exactly the same. And so hats off to the Archon team. I've played 1 game so far with the Queen. She seemed fine. She was useful. She wasn't overpowered. I thought she was great. Really, really good in terms of balance. But on the whole, she works out okay, right? And I think that's good. And as you can see over here, 150 points with the chance for, I think the extra creep movement is it's like a 10-point upgrade, right? Or something like that. Relatively cheap. So on the cheaper end as regards units, one of the cheapest that Zerg can currently field, actually. But at the same time, yeah, not bad. So when looking at her offensively, she has better movement and positioning, which again, with those really short ranges, you kind of actually need with this. So I guess that's a really good thing, being able to both move creep along and make sure that keeps going underneath of you, while also having the ability to move even faster while on creep, I think is really excellent if you want to be able to use her offensively. In the assault phase, you can chip away at units. Do not expect she's going to maul anything of any dramatic level, unless, I don't know, if you were going up against an enemy force that had Zerg, and so, they got a bunch of Zerglings, 4 attacks with the 4+ is only going to do two hits on average. If they armor save even one of those, you're doing, 2 wounds to a single model, right? Or something like that. So in the case of, Zerglings, you're probably going to remove 1 or 2 models, right? You're not going to do much, but at least they don't have a great armor save, right? Against Marines, you might be able to remove a Marine, possibly even 2, depending on whether or not their armor saves actually work. So, whatever. There are different options that you could use. And the fact that you can surge means that if you do get 2 hits, you'll at least be able to sneak 2 of these dice through, right? So again, you're going to do a few wounds here and there. You might remove 1 or 2 models from some of the lower end stuff, but you're not going to do dramatic amounts of damage. Okay, so, just be prepared for that. And then with your impact hits, like, they're technically fine. Again, as we mentioned, on a 3+, that means roughly 3 of them are going to hit. At least 1 of those, maybe 2 are going to be saved by armor saves, probably. So plan on doing 1, maybe 2 of those hits, which is 1 to 2 wounds. It's not 1 to 2 damage. It's not much. Okay, so, just have realistic expectations. It is a nice impact hit value by comparison to the raw output of a Zergling, which is like, impact hits of 1 on a 5+. But that is not much. Okay. And this is the thing, the Zerglings have potentially up to 12 to 18 models all going for those, right? So like their ceiling is a good bit higher, whereas she could be pretty limited here. Okay. And then the combat phase, like for a support, she's fine. 3 attacks on a 4+ is great. It is the bare minimum for, I mean, that's like on par with what, like a single roach, basically, right? Like it's not great. Okay. But at the same time, that's what queens are supposed to be, right? Like they're strong in the opening part of the game because not only do they allow you to spread your creep, which is what you need, not only do they provide air defense against things like oracles, for example, they can come out pretty quickly, but also they're fine against those opener style units, right? The cheapest of things, they'll help you out with helping to take those things out. But they're not your heavy hitters, and that's not what their job should be. So in general, I think they kind of nailed it. I think that they did a really good job with that. Now, defensively, the fact that she can move reasonably fast at 6 to 7 inches on creep means you can help to keep her safe, move her away from stuff. She'll at least be able to keep track with enemies. She won't be outrunning very many things at all, and if they perform a second move in the assault phase in order to try a close distance for a future turn setup, you could be in a lot of trouble. But, like, in general, she's not doing too bad for being a speed 4 model, right? She's fine. With the assault phase, I mean, she doesn't have anything really, right? That's the thing. There really is no defense that she has. She's just relying on 10 wounds with a 4+. And similarly in the combat phase, not much. She's not even going to remove very many attacks against her if she's engaged in close combat and she's fighting, right? And so really understanding this is a support role that is relying on baseline stats, the armored keyword. So there's a lot of stuff that surges against light and she doesn't count as light, which is nice. So at least she's getting that armor save against more stuff. But her biggest defensive ability is the fact she can transfuse and she can block 3 wounds, but it specifies it has to be another friendly biological model or structure, right? So it can't be herself. You would need to have multiple queens staying together in order to transfuse on behalf of each other. Trust to your own stats. Those are really all you have, right? So protect your queens, okay? Or you're going to lose them, okay? Treat your queen with respect. Very important rule for lots of things in life. And so what role does it fill? First of all, I mean, it's a true support unit, right? I mean, you have healing abilities, you have buffing abilities. There's no like hex style abilities, but that's fine. This is a true support unit. And you need to treat her as such. She's very big, she's very tall, she's not a damage unit. She's a support unit, and you need to protect her, okay? She does empower others or near her, which is the best thing about it. She can help to keep them on the battlefield. She can do it more cheaply, so that way you're not tapping abilities that other units would have on your tactical cards in order to use the biomass in order to fuel her abilities. And she's spreading creep, so that way they get to move faster and potentially get other ancillary benefits. She can shoot at ground and air, which I suspect when Wave 3 drops and we see the flyers is going to become really, really important. Okay, because Zerglings can't shoot at air, roaches can't shoot at air. Hydralisks can, and they'll probably be a better option in general for shooting at air. Because as you saw, if nothing else, there's more than one of them when it comes to a squad. So there's that. But like, yeah, it'll be nice to have another attacker, right? You don't have to run multiple Hydras in the hopes that wherever you need to go across the map, you have a form of air defense. You can send the Queen to help out with one of them. And she'll do fine if for no other reason than she's got reasonable damage against all flyers because she can surge light armored for up to a D3, which is pretty great. And she's doing 2 damage on each of those. She could knock down quite a bit if she really needed to, okay? And again, this is on a support character, right? Nobody's expecting that level of damage output from a support character, so that's great, okay? And I mean, she's reasonably durable, right? For being a support unit, the fact that she has 10 wounds with a 4+ save means that you're not spending that much to field a pretty tanky unit, right? I mean, it's only 15 to 16 points per hit point that you're buying, right? Which is really not that bad, especially by comparison to some of the other larger units that we end up seeing so far in the game. And so, does this match the computer game? Well, first of all, from the look of it, I mean, yeah, like it looks really good, right? I mean, it looks really good. And I mean, she fills the support role. She's laying the creep. She's transfusing people, which are the primary abilities we tend to expect from the queen. She's providing some anti-ground, anti-air defense. She's not really replacing the rest of the swarm. You can't just run the enemy with queens. She's going to help to keep you alive. She's going to, she can't transfuse herself, which is accurate to the game. Okay, so keep her alive, right? Got to preserve her. And so I think in general, yeah, it's basically the same, right? I mean, the one difference between the RTS game, and I mentioned this in my feedback after our game where I ended up playing with the queen, where it is a little different is that the transfuse is a nice healing ability for very different reasons from the medic and the medevac for the Terrans, because the beauty of the queen is that it's a heal over time, right? So one of the things that, we mentioned earlier is that her healing got nerfed from 3 to 2, which puts her a decent bit back from the medics, for example. At the same time, one thing that may be better is if there was like she's able to block 2 wounds, and then maybe at the start of the next phase, the target of this ends up also recovering 1 additional wound, can heal 1, right, at the start without using its action. And so, using that terminology, which is kind of the terminology that they use within the board game, or within the tabletop game, it would allow you to kind of get a little bit of that heal over time without making it too broken where there's too much healing going on. And we also don't want to make it so that way the initial blocking of damage is not very much, both because with the RTS, it is a relatively large first drop of healing, and then there's extra bits going on top of that. We don't want to make it so way, well, you're blocking like 1 wound when it first comes in, but then you die, right? And so because of that, it doesn't make a difference whether you're healing over time after that, right? So like I get that, and I want it to be accurate. I don't think it'll be too overpowered. That being said, I've only played 1 game with the queen, so Archon, please do take that feedback with a grain of salt. Okay, there's that. And so, should you buy it? Well, like maybe, and this is the first time that I'm not saying an unashamed yes. And it won't be the last time that I don't give an unashamed yes. Here's the reason why I'm saying maybe. You do get 1 in the starter set. So if you're going to buy the starter set, then you don't really need to worry about buying another queen unless you're already, unless you had plans for running 2 of them. And while you can, especially at higher levels, I could definitely see the benefit of having multiple queens. If you're starting out in that skirmish level because you're just getting started with your friends and you're looking at 1,000 points, I think fitting in 2 queens is going to be pretty hard. That's my guess. Whereas if you get up to say 2,000 points, fitting in 2 queens is fine, because they'd be taking up 300, 320 points, somewhere around there, which is a substantial percentage of your army. But considering you might want healing in multiple places, considering you might want to do much faster and more aggressive creep spread, for that it is very cheap, right? And so because of that, I could see you in one of them, but not everybody might need another one. Some people might say, "Oh, that's fine. I feel comfortable fighting off creep." I don't know who you are. You clearly have not played a lot of actual StarCraft, but I'm just saying, in general, you probably are going to want that creep spread, but at lower levels, do you actually need one? Right. And by taking those, you are passing up on taking another unit of some kind, because it's, she's going to be roughly on par with the cost of another unit on the smaller end. And so some people may find they don't really need to get a second one. If you like support, that's great. If you don't like support, maybe you're really just going straight into damage. You're running like a bunch of Zerglings. Maybe down the line, you run a bunch of Banelings or something like that, and then you want to just support them up with Hydras, because the Hydras are going to give you air defense, but they're also going to do wicked damage from a good distance away, while the enemy is running, into your Zerglings. I think, yeah, sure, if that's the case, you may not actually have the points for queens. That's totally fine. I tend to love support units, so I tend to always come with one of them. Doesn't matter which army I'm running, I always use at least one. But for some people, they may not need it. It's also possible that depending on what we end up getting in wave 2, people might say, well, this is a support unit, and so right now having a queen fits fine. But if we end up getting a different support unit, we recently talked about how could be something like the Infestor. People might say, well, I don't really want to run queens, I want to run Infestors. And let's say that they both compete for that same support slot, as I suspect they will. how many support slots are you planning on having in your force? And so how many of them do you think you can actually run, right? Do you want to be slotting yourself into specific tactical cards that you need to run because they give you extra support slots? I don't know, right? And therein lies the difficulty. So, like in general, I'm planning on buying at least one more, possibly two more, and running up to potentially 3 queens because again, I like support, and I can see the benefit mostly because again, I do roaches. Roaches are like my big thing. Being able to block 3 wounds to a roach, and then potentially the roach is already burrowed, so it's getting an evade save on top of its already good armor save against shots that are coming in it, and then being able to remain burrowed, heal up some of the damage they already have, and then suddenly unburrow and start attacking people. Like, there are big benefits to doing that. And so I will be running multiples of these. But a lot of people, maybe they won't. I will throw this out there, and you can see it in the paint job. It looks dope. So, like, if I was just a model collector, I would buy a couple of these if for no other reason than different paint schemes. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to paint. It seems like a really beautiful job. It's a really nice looking model. So I'm going to add a couple more to my army for no other reason than I kind of want to see them, right? And I want to be able to use them. So I see the advantage in doing these, but I also understand if you don't. But what do you think? Do you think that the queen is, a fine idea, but you'd get just as much good crushing the enemy with more firepower as you would by trying to block wounds? Do you think that the creep spread, in order to get the benefits from creep, are just so powerful and so good that you'd be a fool to leave these at home? Let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.